Hi everyone, my name's Jared and I'm 15 years old. Do you know what it feels like to look into the mirror and don't see the person you want to see? Have you ever rejected yourself so much that you wanted to forget who you are and to pretend you were someone else? No, I've never suffered from any bullying at school or any kind of abuse. The point is that I am nothing. There's absolutely nothing special about me. At school, I was everybody's shadow friend, easily forgotten when not needed. I was one of 5 kids in my family, so I don't feel remarkably special there either. The only person I had in my life who ever cared about me was Frank. He's been my friend since early childhood. He was hardly lacking charisma and has always been the life of the party. I admired him and worshipped him, and never understood why this kind of person could be interested in having such a boring and basic friend like me. We studied at different schools, but we hang out a lot after our classes. He told me about his own music band and numerous girlfriends and parties, and I would always listen to him with my mouth wide open and try to hide the pain of not being able to have a tiny bit of what he had. I don't remember exactly when I realized this, but I started to hate him. But of course, I didn't have enough courage to admit that he was not the one to blame. It was me. So I tried to do my best to get rid of these nasty feelings and to maintain my friendship with Frank. One day, Frank came to my house on a weekend. He was all smiles. He told me he had absolutely great news for me. It turned out that Frank was going to my school now, and his parents even asked the principal to transfer him to my class. My mother was so happy to hear that. She loved Frank, like everyone else did. Every time he came round, she would have long chats with him. Sometimes, I even thought that she would be much happier if Frank was her son. You might have already guessed it, but I did not find this news exciting at all. Now I had to watch his Superman achievements every day. And besides, I didn't want Frank to become aware of my social status at school. Of course, he immediately became the top of the class, but then it went from bad to worse. He got Violet's attention. Violet was the girl of my dreams. I've had a serious crush on her for 2 years, but of course I had no chance there. I didn't have the sense to even think about it. I can't say the same about Frank. He was a heartbreaker, and soon my greatest fears were actually realized. Once he asked me to tell him everything I knew about Violet because he wanted to ask her out. For me, this was a punch in the gut. I was full of hatred and rage, but I kept pretending that I was a reliable friend, even though it was getting more and more unbearable. Because I'd been in love with Violet for quite a long time, I knew more about her than he could ever imagine. I knew her favorite movies and music bands and the perfume she liked, everything, down to the littlest detail. I felt like I was digging my own grave. But I told him everything I knew. Frank was a little bit surprised that I was so aware of her life, and wondered if Violet and I were friends or maybe something else. I just froze for a second, but then made myself say that he definitely had nothing to worry about. I only wish I knew where this would eventually lead us. One day after school, Frank suddenly suggested going for a walk in the forest we used to play in when we were kids. I think that I've probably never seen my friend so happy. We went to our favourite place on the cliff, near the waterfalls, and sat down to watch the sunset. And then Frank said, "I think I'm in love with her, and I'm sure she's in love with me." Thanks for your help, Jared. My heart sank. How could it happen so fast? I've been trying to get the girl's attention for years, and in the blink of an eye, she had fallen in love with Frank as soon as he showed up. Moreover, not without my help. This was too much for me. I sprang to my feet and ran. I was overwhelmed with rage. Frank now owned everything that was dear to me in this world. I had nothing to even dream about anymore. I wish he would just disappear forever. I was jumping from one rock to another and didn't notice I'd come too close to the waterfall. One false move and I'd fall down. I looked back and saw Frank's scared face. He was running after me, calling my name. I heard him screaming, "Don't move, I'll help you." Suddenly, Frank slipped on a rock face and fell over the cliff. I watched him fall head over heels. But then he managed to grab hold of something. He started to cry for help. "Please, Jared, help me!" I was just standing there without being able to move. But then I came to my senses. What am I doing? My friend is about to die and I'm just doing nothing. I rushed to Frank and tried to give him my hand, but he didn't make it and fell down. I was stunned. I called his name a million times, but he never answered back. I burst into tears. How could there be such a jealous and unworthy person like me? I killed my best friend, my only friend. Though there was little chance Frank had managed to survive, I rushed back to town to call for help. I was in a daze when the rescuers found him. He was pale and all covered in bruises and scratches. But a miracle happened. He was alive. I was weeping for joy. But of course, this was not the end. Frank has a broken spine. He underwent 5 surgeries, which still haven't changed the horrible truth. He will never be able to walk again. I went to the hospital every single day, but I didn't have the heart to open the door of his room. His parents and friends came to visit him as well and attacked me with questions. And I did not have the heart to tell them the truth. What would I say? I couldn't bring myself to say anything and just ended up mumbling some nonsense. Fear cut me to the bone when I thought about what I'd tell Violet when she found out what happened to Frank. How was I going to look her in the eye? Well, the day came when she finally showed up. She was in tears. Before going into the room, she looked at me and asked how Frank was feeling. I think this was the first time she noticed me. The first time she ever asked me a question. It was a shame to think about it, under the circumstances, but I couldn't help it. I was looking at Violet and felt tears rolling down my cheek. I confessed to everything, my love for her and my jealousy and envy for Frank. I told her the whole story of my lifelong pain. I tried to persuade her that it was all just an accident, that I didn't want this to happen. I expected her to call me insane and to blame me, but she just gave me a hug and said that I had to talk to Frank myself and to tell him the truth. Finally, I plucked up all my courage and went into Frank's room. He was all wrapped up in a cast, but he was so happy to see me. He thanked me for rescuing him millions of times. I could not believe my ears. Rescued him? I actually almost killed him. But then he looked at me very seriously and asked, "What happened, Jared? What was bothering you so much? Why did you have to run away?" I took a deep breath and started my confession. When I finished, Frank smiled and said, "I'm happy that you finally said what you're really thinking." He also said he would never dare to hit on a girl his best friend liked and couldn't believe that I hadn't just told him. I've never felt so bad in my life. But I have to admit, I finally breathed a little sigh of relief at that moment. I felt alive and needed for the first time in my life, but it was all bittersweet at the same time. I have never felt so bad in my life. Lies and envy are the most horrible and destructive things in the world. They ruin people's lives irreversibly. Envy destroyed my best friend's life, and the life of the girl I loved. It destroyed my life as well. I don't think I will ever be able to forgive myself for what I've done, though both Frank and Violet did forgive me. I would never expect anyone to be so generous. They both had me promise to never share this dark secret with anyone, and not tell mine or Jared's parents about what really happened. Even though Frank will be confined to a wheelchair forever, he hasn't seemed to have lost his optimism and his joy for life. He is determined to finish school and to go to college afterwards. He always loved playing basketball, and he even played on a school team. But since he has no possibility of doing it anymore, he decided to play wheelchair basketball. Violet was not scared of the situation at all. She is such a great support for Frank and backs him up in everything he does. Every weekend, Violet and I take him to the park, and we have a lot of fun together. I think the two of them have really found each other. I really hope they're going to get married one day. As for me, this incident helped me to rethink my priorities and to reconsider my worldview. Frank is still an absolute role model for me. His hunger to keep going and his love for life fascinates and inspires me. Have you ever envied or lied to anyone? Did it cause trouble? I would be happy to know what you think of my story. You can give me a piece of your mind in the comments if you want to, but don't try too hard. I've had enough punishment for the rest of my life.